I met my wife back in college. We were young, idealistic, and absolutely sure we were going to beat the odds. We dated for 5 years before getting married, and for the most part, things were good. We built a life together, had 2 daughters, now 13 and 15. There were ups and downs, sure, but I thought we were solid. Until everything changed. It started small. In January last year, I noticed she was on her phone a lot. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone's glued to their screens these days, right? But something in my gut told me something wasn't right. She'd smile when she looked at her phone, but not at me. She was more distant, cold even. When I asked about it, she lied, said it was nothing. Then she started blaming me. Said I was insecure, jealous, typical gaslighting, and maybe I was too soft. Maybe I should have seen it sooner. I wasn't perfect either. I've made mistakes I regret, but while I was trying to fix things, she was checked out, emotionally gone. Then came D-Day, early June. She admitted she'd been having an emotional affair. Said she'd only slept with him twice. I don't know why they always say only. Like, that makes it easier to swallow. She blamed me for it, said I wasn't meeting her emotional needs. Said she was lonely, that I drove her to it. But then came the kicker. She wanted to work things out. I agreed. Because I'm the guy who fights for his marriage. I believed in our family. So I tried. I put in the effort. She said she wanted reconciliation, but I could feel she wasn't really trying. And worst of all, she kept texting him, kept deleting messages. I asked her to stop. She promised she would, then kept doing it anyway. I was sleeping next to a woman who was lying to my face every day, and I still tried to make it work. After her so-called confession, I told myself I'd try. For the kids, for the years we had, for the chance that maybe, just maybe, she meant it when she said she wanted to fix things. But deep down, I knew something was still off. She said she cut contact with him, but she was still glued to her phone, still deleting messages. When I brought it up again, she said, "We're just friends now. Just friends." After admitting to sleeping with him. The disrespect of that sentence alone felt like a slap in the face. When I pushed harder, she flipped it on me. Accused me of not letting things go. Told me I was suffocating her. And somehow, every time I tried to talk about it, I ended up being the one apologizing. It was like emotional judo. Every argument twisted until she was the victim, and I was the monster. I kept swallowing my anger, my confusion, my heartbreak, because I didn't want to lose my family. Then came the disappearances. She'd tell me she was visiting family, that her cousin was sick, that her sister needed her, always someone else needing her. Never me. She stopped picking up my calls during those weekends, ignored my texts. And when she returned, it was always with a story that sounded rehearsed, too clean, too convenient. One weekend she vanished entirely. No texts, no responses, total silence. When she came back, she said she forgot her phone at her sister's place and had to rush her cousin to the ER. And I, like a fool, wanted so badly to believe her that I did. But deep down, I knew the truth. She wasn't visiting family. She was visiting him. All the while, I was bending over backward, cooking dinner, showing up, trying to be the best version of myself. I wasn't perfect, but I was trying. I made real changes. She saw them, she acknowledged them, but she just didn't care. And by mid-December, she dropped the bomb. It was mid-December when she sat me down. I thought maybe she was finally ready to work on things, that we were going to have a real conversation. But I was wrong. She looked me in the eye and said she was moving out. No fight. No yelling. Just calm, collected certainty. Like she had been planning this for weeks. She said she still cared about me, but that she was unhappy in our relationship, that she couldn't pretend anymore. And then, the part that shattered what was left of me, she told me she was in love with him. The man she cheated with. The man who helped destroy our marriage. She called him her soulmate. My heart dropped. I begged her, something I'm ashamed to admit now. I cried, asking her to think about the kids, about our years together, about everything we'd built. But her mind was made up. The woman I loved, she was already gone. We sat down and told the kids together. She explained she would be moving out and that we'd be sharing custody, weekdays with me, weekends with her. I asked where she was going. She said his apartment, though she admitted it was small and not ideal for the kids to visit often. A week later, she filed for divorce. I didn't eat for days. I barely slept. I walked through life like a ghost, going through the motions for my daughters. I remember crying alone in the dark after they went to bed, trying to understand how someone could walk away so coldly. I still held on to some hope then. I thought maybe, just maybe, after some time apart, she'd come to her senses, that she'd realize what she was throwing away. But the truth is, she already had. And I was left with the silence, with the paperwork, with two confused, heartbroken girls who didn't understand how their mother could just choose someone else. I thought that was the worst it could get. But it wasn't. A few weeks after she moved out and filed for divorce, I reached what felt like a breaking point. The girls were struggling, silent at dinner, distracted in the mornings, lost in their own sadness. I thought maybe someone from her side could help. Maybe her parents or siblings could reach out to her, remind her of what she was letting go. I took a deep breath and made the decision. I sent a message to her sister. I explained everything, briefly, without accusation. Just the truth. Her sister moved in with another man. Our lives were breaking. Our daughters were hurting. I didn't expect her to take sides, but I hoped she would at least know the human impact of her sister's decision. What happened next blindsided me. Within days, her sister had rallied the family. They made excuses for her, talked about loneliness, midlife, her struggle to find herself. They painted me as the reason she left, as cold, distant, unloving. According to them, I'd ignored her, shutting her out emotionally, and she'd reached her breaking point. Was any of it true? Maybe in some twisted way. I could have been better. I could have noticed her pain. I could have fought harder for us. But their story erased the years of love we shared, the father she described in her legal filings, and the pain bleeds through in everything I do now. I watched helplessly as the woman who said I was the reason she stayed so long started to vanish, lost in their version of, she made a brave, self-finding choice. In their narrative, she was a victim of my coldness, not the woman who chose betrayal and left her family. That weekend, I sat at the kitchen table with my girls. I told them what had happened, that Grandma and aunties would be calling me soon, upset, that things were confusing. They didn't say much. They were too deep in grief to say much of anything. But the hurt in their eyes, that was my fault too. I realized then that this heartbreak wasn't just between me and her. It had spread to the whole family, mine, theirs, my daughters. And every time someone asked, "How are you holding up?" I just felt like a ghost, desperately trying to figure out where I belonged. Inside my broken home or outside their protected narrative. After everything, the betrayal, the lies, the abandonment, there was one thing I couldn't lose: my daughters. I knew I was falling apart emotionally, but I also knew I had to be strong for them. They were already living in a world that made no sense anymore. If I crumbled, what would be left for them to hold on to? So I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping. I called my lawyer. We began filing for primary custody. I didn't want to keep the kids from their mother. I wasn't interested in revenge, but I wanted stability. I wanted to protect them from being dragged between her broken apartment and her on-again, off-again relationship with the man who helped tear our family apart. I wanted to give them a safe place where they wouldn't feel like pawns in someone else's chaos. My lawyer understood. He'd seen it before. He told me it wouldn't be easy, especially if she decided to fight back. But he thought I had a strong case. I was the one maintaining the home, paying the bills, keeping the kids in school, keeping their lives running. She had walked away. In the middle of this, something strange started happening. She began calling more. Texting. Not about custody, about us, about memories, about what we had, about how she missed the girls, and missed me. She said she wanted to come by and cook meals for the kids. I said okay. I wanted the girls to have their mother in their lives, even if mine no longer made sense. But it didn't stop at the kids. She started leaving notes again. Flowers. Cooking my favorite dishes. Dressing like she used to when we were first dating. Telling me she was going to therapy. Asking if I'd consider marriage counseling. Tearing up as she asked if there was still hope. And I didn't know what to say. Because somewhere inside, I still loved her. But I couldn't trust her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And now, for the first time in a long time, I had the power to say no. She came by almost every afternoon now. At first it was just to see the girls, help with dinner, talk about school, make up for lost time. I was okay with that. I wanted our daughters to feel like they still had both parents, even if not under the same roof. But it didn't stop there. She started cleaning the house again. The kitchen, the laundry, folding towels just the way I like them. At first, I thought she was just trying to help. Then she started leaving notes in my lunch bag, little post-its that said, "I miss you. You looked good today. I'll wait as long as it takes." She brought flowers, the exact kind she used to surprise me with on our anniversary. She cooked my favorite meals and sat nearby while I ate, not pushing conversation, but hoping I'd say something, hoping I'd open the door again. Then came the harder questions. Are you really going through with the divorce? Do you think we could ever try again? Can't we rebuild for the girls? I didn't know what to say. My heart was torn in two. One part of me wanted to believe her. To believe the therapy, the tears, the effort were real. That she had truly changed. That the woman I married was still buried underneath the pain and shame. And that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. But the other part of me, the part that stayed awake on those long, lonely nights, remembered the lies, the gaslighting, the way she held my hand one day and ran off to someone else the next, and I couldn't stop asking myself, was this love or was it just regret? Did she want me? Or did she just want her safety net back, the man who never stopped trying even when she gave up? And in those quiet moments, when the girls were asleep and she was gone again, I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was the fool for still wondering. It happened on a Saturday. The kids were at their grandparents' house for the weekend, and she showed up unannounced. I opened the door and could see it instantly. Something was off. Her eyes were puffy, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She stepped inside, barely said a word, then sat at the kitchen table. The same table we used to laugh around every night. For a long time, she just stared at her hands like she was gathering courage. And then she broke. Tears came fast. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed everything. I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything, but I'm begging you, please, don't go through with the divorce. She said the words I used to wish for, back when I was crying alone, watching her walk away, back when I still hoped she'd turn around and realize what she was doing. I've lost everything, she whispered. My family barely talks to me. My sisters can't look me in the eye. My dad, he won't even call me back. And he used to be my best friend. Then she said something that stayed with me. You're the only one who still looks at me without hate. She begged for another chance. Said she'd do anything. Go to counseling. Follow my lead. Start over from scratch. She promised she'd never lie to me again. Never hurt me again. That she'd prove I could trust her. I stood there in silence, watching this woman, the same woman who once made me feel like I was nothing, now on her knees, crying in my kitchen, and you'd think it would have felt good. Vindicating, satisfying even. But it didn't. It just felt heavy, like the weight of every broken moment, every sleepless night, every time I doubted my own worth, all pressing down on my chest at once. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about her wanting me back. It was about me deciding whether I still wanted us. After she left that day, still crying, still begging, I sat in silence for hours. I thought about everything, the good times, the kids, the years we'd spent building this life together. I thought about the way she used to look at me, the laughter we once shared, the quiet moments that used to feel like home. But I also thought about the silence when she disappeared. The gaslighting. The months of lies. The nights she was in someone else's arms while I was at home, waiting, hoping, breaking. I used to think love was enough, that if you loved someone deeply enough, you could get through anything. But I've learned that love alone can't rebuild what trust has torn apart. And then there was the other truth, the one I didn't want to face. I still loved her, even after all the pain, even after she chose him. There was a part of me, some old, stubborn part, that remembered who she used to be, who we used to be. And I hated that. I hated that she still had a piece of my heart after everything. But then I asked myself something I hadn't dared to before. If I took her back, would I ever be able to look at her the same way again? Would I ever trust her again? Sleep next to her without wondering? Hear her laugh without thinking about the secrets she once kept? And most importantly, if I said yes, would I be doing it for me? Or because I was afraid to be alone? That was the question that hit hardest. Because the truth is, I had been afraid. Afraid of letting go. Afraid of what life looked like without her. But now I was beginning to understand something. Choosing to stay in a broken relationship out of fear isn't love, it's self-abandonment. And I had already lost too much of myself trying to save something that no longer existed. It was a Wednesday evening. The girls were at their after-school clubs and the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that once made me feel lonely, but now gave me peace to think. She came by again. This time, she didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just looked tired. Emotionally exhausted, like someone who had finally accepted that time was running out. "I don't know what else to say," she told me, standing in the kitchen doorway. "I've said sorry. I've told you I'd change. I've done everything I can to make things right. But if you still want the divorce, I'll stop fighting it." She was right. She had said all the right things. And maybe in another life that would have been enough. I looked her in the eyes. The same eyes I once trusted with every piece of my heart. And I said, "I forgive you, but I can't do this anymore. I've spent too long trying to carry both of us, and I've lost too much of myself in the process." She didn't argue. She just nodded slowly. And then she whispered, "So, that's it." I nodded, the look on her face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even surprise. It was grief. Not for me, not even for us, but for the consequences of her own actions finally catching up. She sat down at the table, the same one where she once broke down begging, and stared at nothing for a long time. "I thought you'd always be there," she said. "I was," I replied. "Until I wasn't." She left quietly. No slamming doors. No final words. Just silence. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel weak. I felt free. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I finally started loving myself enough to walk away. The divorce papers are signed now. There's no more waiting, no more hoping, no more second guessing. Just paperwork, signatures, and a clean, heavy silence where a marriage used to be. And yet, I feel lighter. People keep asking me if I'm okay, if I'm angry, if I'm bitter. I tell them the truth. I'm tired, but I'm healing. Slowly, quietly, one breath, one day, one step at a time. Some days are harder than others. I still miss the version of her that used to laugh with me in the kitchen while we made pancakes. I still miss the warmth of a home that no longer exists. And sometimes, I still catch myself wondering what might have been if she had just chosen differently. But then I look at my daughters. I see them trying, smiling again, laughing at the dinner table, leaning into their routines, reaching for me without hesitation. They don't say it in words, but I can feel it. They trust me. I never left them. I never gave up on them. And that means more to me than anything else in the world. I've learned that healing isn't about pretending the pain never happened. It's about choosing to live anyway, choosing to grow from it, to become someone stronger, wiser, and more grounded than before. I don't hate her. I never did, but I no longer need her. And that difference, that peace, is everything. I'm not sure what the future holds. Maybe one day I'll love again. Maybe I won't. But I know this. I'll keep showing up for my girls. I'll keep building a life I'm proud of. One where I'm no longer second-guessing myself. One where I don't have to wonder if I'm enough. Because I am. Not because someone else says so, but because I finally believe it myself.